Welcome back, traveler of time. If your eyes are already heavy, let them rest. Tonight, I'll carry you across windswept mountains, through frozen mornings and cracked hands. We won't follow emperors. We won't glorify conquest. Instead, we'll walk with those whose names were never written. This is the story of a man without a voice. Not because he cannot speak, but because no one would listen if he did. A stone carrier, a number, a back in a line. And before we begin, let the silence stretch just a little longer. If this journey stills your mind, if your dreams wrap themselves in stone, dust, and sky, leave a like. Subscribe to silence. And now, let's begin. I don't remember the road I took to get here, only that I didn't take it willingly. One day I was someone, not much, but someone, and the next I was part of a line. A line of men, heads down, ropes around their waists, like beads on a string that someone else is threading through the wilderness. We don't speak, not because we're forbidden, though we are, but because it's easier not to. The first time I saw the wall, it wasn't a wall. It was a promise, or maybe a threat. A line of earth cut from the mountain like a wound. It stretched into mist. It made the sky seem smaller. They handed me a stone the moment I arrived. No welcome, no explanation, just wait. The stone was warm from the sun. I remember thinking that it was still warm. I would learn later how fast that heat runs away when night comes. They told us to place the stones, one after another, one after another. But it wasn't the stones that hurt. It was the slope. We weren't building on flat land. No, that would be too kind. We were crawling up the spine of the mountain. Each morning began in fog. Each footstep was a question. Would it hold? Would I fall? Would I vanish like the ones before me? No one explained who the wall was for. They only said, "The North must not pass." North was a concept to me then, a word from maps I'd never seen. I didn't fear the enemy. I feared slipping. I feared the man with the whip who never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His silence was sharper than a blade. The days were carved from the same gray rock we carried. Wake, lift, walk, place. Wake, lift, walk, place. Even our blisters formed patterns, calligraphy in flesh. One night, the man beside me disappeared. Not ran, disappeared. No footprints, no blood. Just an empty blanket, curled in on itself. They didn't stop to ask. They didn't search. They just gave me his stone the next morning. I carried both, because someone had to. We had no names here, only shoulder scars and the size of the stones we bore. And still the wall grew. Sometimes I wondered if we were building it to keep something out, or to keep ourselves in. They fed us twice a day. Rice, if we were lucky. Hot water with leaves, if the cook was generous. Salt, always. Salt for wounds, for sores, for the lie of strength. At night, I would lay on my back and stare at stars so bright they looked close enough to speak. But they never did. Only the wind spoke, and it never said kind things. I learned to breathe with my jaw clenched, to sleep with one ear, listening for shifting rock, to walk without leaving a trace. One morning, I stepped wrong. My foot slid down a loose edge, and I dropped the stone. It rolled. Far. It hit another man. Not hard, but enough. He looked at me, not angry, just empty. And then he walked away, down the hill. He never came back. That was when I realized something terrifying. No one would stop you from leaving, but no one would come find you either. The wall didn't care. It didn't punish. It simply continued. We were ants building a dam for a river we'd never drink from. There was a boy, barely 15, who sang at night. Only when he thought the guards were sleeping. He sang songs of rivers, of fish, of fields, things I couldn't remember anymore. The men would lie still, pretending not to listen, but the silence he sang into it changed. One morning, he didn't sing. He didn't speak. He carried his stone like the rest of us, but his eyes were gone somewhere else. That night, he didn't sleep. He just stared north, whispering something under his breath. I didn't hear it all, but I heard one word: home. He vanished the next night. Some say he ran. Some say the wall took him. But I think he just stopped belonging here. That scared me more than anything. We built by moonlight once, when the overseers said the emperor demanded faster work. The wall didn't glow, but it remembered. It held cold like memory. I laid a stone and felt something underneath. A name etched faintly. Not mine. Not anyone here. A name older than this stone, carved in a language I couldn't read. I covered it with my own stone. I said nothing. But that night, I dreamed of voices in the stone. Not screaming, just talking. Like water through rock. Like time, whispering. The days blur. The wall grows. I no longer count how many stones I've laid. Only how many shoulders I've buried. I wonder, sometimes, what happens when we finish. But deep down, I know we never will. Because the wall isn't the stones. It's us. The forgotten ones. The quiet ones. The ones who carried history on our backs and left no name. There's a rhythm to pain. A slow, hollow drumbeat. At first it feels sharp, sudden, like striking stone with your bare hand. But over time, it flattens, spreads. It becomes part of your breath. I carry the same stone as yesterday. Not the exact one, of course. But the same size. The same weight. The same hunger pressed into its corners. Sometimes I think I'm carrying myself. The version of me that might have lived somewhere else. A farmer. A fisherman. A father. But he's heavy now. Hard. Dusty. Quiet. They say the wall stretches like a dragon's spine. That from the clouds, it curls and wins like something alive. I believe it. The way it hums in the morning. The way it drinks sweat. The way it knows when someone is too slow and seems to lean just slightly, urging them forward or over the edge. Today we laid the bones. No, not in ceremony. There's no incense here. Only lime and silence. The old pit had filled. Some of the men who carried stones now carried something else, wrapped loosely in cloth. Sometimes not even that. They didn't stop the work, didn't hold the moment. The pit was opened. The bones were stacked, and the lime was thrown in as if burying fire. Then the stones came, one by one, laid atop the bodies. Not to mark them, to seal them. I know the man buried second. He snored too loud. Now he'll never breathe again. I placed a stone on his chest. I didn't know if it was right, but it felt necessary. We aren't just building with the dead. We are building on them. The wall isn't made of stone. Not really. It's made of sacrifice, of stories never told, of names erased before they were ever spoken aloud. We had a name for that kind of death back home. The soft disappearance. No scream, no farewell. Just a man missing from the line. And then another, each stone above him like silence layered. It rained yesterday. Cold, thin rain that didn't cleanse. Only soaked. The clay turned to sludge. Our feet slipped, and still we worked. One man fell hard. His leg twisted beneath him. The foreman came, said nothing, just stared. The man was lifted not by the guards, but by us. We laid him under a tarp of old cloth near the supply shed. He didn't speak, didn't cry. He just stared at the clouds, mouth open, catching water. By morning, he was gone. The tarp folded, the mud smoothed flat. We knew what that meant. There's a superstition now. We don't say, "I'll see you tomorrow." We say, "If the wall allows," or "If the slope holds me." Our calendar is bone and breath. You live another day if your back holds, if your hands don't tremble too much to grip. I've learned the trick to staying unseen by the guards. Never stand up too tall. Never speak unless spoken to. Never help someone unless no one's watching. And even then, do it like you're dropping something, not giving. Some men whisper about escape. They say if you follow the base of the wall west, eventually it stops. That beyond it is forest, fruit, freedom, but no one knows anyone who's done it. The last man who tried? He walked east by mistake. They found him 2 days later, curled at the base of a watchtower, eyes open, empty. The guards never touched him, just laughed, then made us build a small ledge where he lay. Now, every time we pass it, we step carefully. The ledge is narrow, and the drop is long. I found a stone today that hummed. Not sang hummed, a low, slow vibration. I pressed my ear to it, and I swear I heard breath. Not mine, not anyone's around me, but deep, patient breathing, like the mountain itself was asleep. I placed the stone like all the others, but I watched it longer. It was still, but not silent. The guards began marking our shoulders this week, not with ink, with heat. A thin iron pressed just long enough to leave skin raw. It's not a punishment, it's inventory. So they know which line you came from, which section you build. I carry the mark now. 3 lines, 1 for each month I've survived. The man beside me has only 1. He asked if more meant respect. I told him the truth. More means your bones are closer to breaking. I had a dream last night, rare now in this cold. In it, I wasn't carrying a stone. The wall was gone, the sky wide, the fields green. There was a child, a hand in mine, a voice saying, "You're home." When I woke, my hand was clenched around a pebble. I didn't remember picking it up. I kept it, in my cloth wrap, my secret stone. They say the Emperor never walks the wall. He sends others. He reads scrolls about its progress, but he will never see what I see, how the wind scrapes the mortar, how our breath fogs the night air in clouds so thick we seem like ghosts already, how silence grows like moss between our ribs. If he ever comes, I wonder if he will hear the voices, not ours, the ones in the stone, the ones who stayed, the ones who didn't leave a name. And so we place another row, and another. The slope sharpens. Our backs ache. The wind grows teeth. But still we climb. Still we carry. Still we build. Because the wall is not finished. Because we are not finished. Because forgetting is too easy. And someone must remember, even if it's only the stone. The wind didn't stop last night. It howled like it was mourning something, or warning something. Some men didn't sleep. Others didn't wake. I woke with dust in my mouth and frost on my blanket. The fire had gone out hours before dawn, and no one had the will to stir it again. But the stones don't care if you slept. They wait. Heavy. Indifferent. I lifted mine like I always do. Not by strength, by memory. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. There's a man they call the Walker. No one knows his real name. He's tall, thin, and doesn't blink often. He doesn't speak either, not even to the guards. They stopped trying years ago. Every day, he carries more than anyone else. Sometimes 2 stones. Sometimes 3. He doesn't struggle. He just walks. Up, then down. Up, then down. Some say he was once a soldier. Others say he's already dead and just doesn't know it yet. I believe neither. I believe he's part of the wall already, a spirit given shape. Something the stones needed to move themselves. One night, I passed him going the other direction. He looked at me. No smile, no nod, just recognition. And then he said one word. Remember. That was all. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat locked. My skin cold. Because he hadn't spoken with his mouth. He spoke with the air. And I felt the word in my spine. Later that day, a rock cracked in my hand. Not chipped, cracked. A perfect line, right through its center, as if cut by water. Inside, something glittered. Not gold. Not gem. Just memory. A flash. A flicker. I saw men before me. Not from yesterday, from centuries ago. Their clothes were different. Their faces harder. They laughed. And then they vanished. I dropped the stone. Picked it up again. Nothing. It was just stone once more. But for that breath, I was not alone. Some workers started writing in the dust with their fingers. Not messages, patterns. Circles. Arcs. Mimicking the curve of the wall from above. One man drew something that looked like an eye. Another crushed it with his heel without a word. We don't talk about why. We don't ask where they learn these shapes. We just carry. But I saw one of the guards watching. Not with anger. With fear. I saw a girl today. At the edge of the ridge, where no one is allowed to go. She stood barefoot, staring at the wall. She didn't move. Didn't flinch when the wind pulled her hair sideways. And when I blinked, she was gone. I asked one of the cooks about her. He paled. Said, "She's seen near every site before collapse." I asked what that meant. He didn't answer, but he looked up at the tower nearest us, and then turned away. Some nights, we hear music. No instruments. Just tone. Like a flute made of fog. Soft. Long. Beautiful. It comes from the valley below. But when we send scouts to check, there's nothing. No camps. No fires. No footprints. Only stone. Some say it's the mountains singing. Some say it's the bones. I think it's the wall itself, tuning its voice, finding the right note. I caught my reflection today, in a pool beside the water barrels. The surface was still, but the face looking back wasn't mine. Not exactly. Older, sharper, wiser, and smiling. I hadn't smiled in weeks. When I looked again, it was gone. Only me. Gray, cracked, tired. But for a moment, I felt seen. They rotate us now. Move us to new sections. They say it's for balance. So the work continues evenly. But some whisper it's because the wall is shifting, that it grows faster in some places than others, that it chooses. I didn't believe that, until I saw it. A finished section level, clean, was different the next morning. One corner angled inward. The stones rearranged. No prints, no marks, just changed, as if it preferred another form. The overseer barked orders, but no one touched it, not even him. There's a ritual now. When a man dies, we don't bury him immediately. We sit beside his stone. Each man lays a hand on it, says nothing, just breathes. Then we carry it together slow, quiet, and lay it atop him. Only then does the wall take him. It's not tradition. It's necessity. If you don't say goodbye, he stays. We've learned that. The hard way. I keep dreaming of a tower. One not yet built. But I know exactly where it will stand. I can see it, angles, shadows, stones I haven't touched yet. Each night, I walk it. Not climb walk. Inside it, there's no end. Just one spiral. Down, then up, then down again. At the center, a single stone. Smooth. Round. Still warm. I reach for it, and always wake up. My hand closed, holding nothing, but the warmth lingers. We don't measure time anymore. The sun moves, the wind shifts, the stars rotate, but none of it belongs to us. We measure by loss, by silence, by how many steps it takes before your knees stop trembling. Today, I counted them. 312 steps between base camp and the top ridge. 312 heartbeats of chance, of memory, of fear. And somewhere near step 120, I thought, maybe the wall isn't built to stop invaders. Maybe it's built to keep something inside. And still, I carry, because the stones ask nothing, but remember everything. They started giving us numbers, not just for inventory, for identity, stamped on thin bone tiles, tied around our necks with fraying thread. Mine says 1,643. I don't know what happened to 1,642. They say it's to make counting easier, but we've learned this. Once they give you a number, they've already prepared your replacement. We now sleep in rows, not because anyone told us to, but because it makes it easier to know who's gone in the morning. You wake up and scan the line. If there's a space, someone didn't make it. No names, no questions. The space fills quickly. It always does. This morning, I watched a man stare at his own hands for an hour. Just stare. They weren't bleeding, weren't broken, just tired. And yet he looked at them like he didn't recognize them anymore. He whispered, "These hands don't belong to me." Then he folded them, stood up, and walked away. No one followed. By sunset, his tile had been passed to another. The wall now smells like something deeper than stone. Not rot, not death. Memory. The kind that clings, like the scent of someone who used to sleep in your bed. Sweet, sharp, unwelcome. I asked the cook if he noticed it. He shrugged, said, "Maybe the mountain's remembering its own bones." I laughed, then realized he wasn't joking. They brought in a new group today. Fresh faces, wider eyes, soft hands. Most won't last a month. I watched one young man no more than 17 drop his first stone. The guard barked. He flinched, picked it up, and bled immediately. A shallow slice across the palm. Not fatal, but the kind of cut that tells you what's coming. By dusk, he was quiet. By dawn, he was gone. The stone still waits where he dropped it. No one touches it. Not out of fear, out of respect. The slope near the southern wall cracked yesterday. Not from weight, from something underneath. The ground shook. The stone shifted, and something rose. Not high, just enough. It looked like a headstone, but older. No name. No script. Just one symbol. A spiral turning in on itself. The foreman said, "Cover it." We did, but not before one man traced it with his finger. He hasn't spoken since. Not a word. Not even in sleep. And his tile? Now warm to the touch. I saw the walker again. He's still silent. Still moving. But slower now. He carries the same size stone as always. But his steps hesitate. Like he's walking on thoughts instead of ground. I followed him once. Not far. Just far enough to notice something strange. He walks the same path every day. Same curves. Same turns. And now, there's a faint groove in the rock, worn in the exact line of his steps, as if even the mountain recognizes his route. Like he's tracing something back into existence. That night, the fog rolled in thicker than ever. You couldn't see 5 paces ahead, but the wall glowed. Faintly. Pale. Not bright enough to light your way, but just enough to remind you it was there. The men didn't question it. They just kept working. The glow was soft and oddly comforting. Some said it was fireflies. Others said it was gas in the mortar. But I think the wall didn't want to be forgotten. I heard whispering in the stones today. Not voices. Not ghosts. Thoughts. Not mine. I pressed my hand against the mortar and felt grief. Old grief. Slow grief. Not fresh like a wound, but settled like ash. And under that, resolve. The kind that doesn't shout. Only endures. I didn't tell anyone. Some things are meant to be carried alone. The night after, someone placed a small statue by the water barrels. It wasn't there the day before. A kneeling figure. Face hidden. Hands offering nothing. No one claimed it. But no one moved it either. It's still there. Covered in dust now. But somehow untouched. And every morning, someone bows to it before lifting their stone. Not religiously. Just rhythmically. As if saying, "I'm still here." They say the wall once broke. Cracked in the middle of a clear day. With no quake. No storm. Just pressure from inside. No one speaks about what caused it. But some of the older men were there. They say it screamed. The wall. Not the workers. The wall. A long, low sound like a horn blown under the earth. And then silence. It sealed itself the next day. No repairs. No tools. The stones realigned overnight, as if embarrassed. Or finished. No one builds near that section now. Even the guards avoid it. Sometimes I feel like the wall is listening. To footsteps. To breath. To thoughts not even we understand. Like it's learning. Changing. We've stopped carving marks into the stone. It erases them. Overnight. Always clean. Always smooth. Only one kind of mark remains. The ones it gives back. Small scratches, shaped like script, but in no language we know. I traced one into the dirt once. The ground beneath my feet warmed. Just for a moment. Then it was cold again. At night, I press my ear against the stone I'll place tomorrow. I don't know why, but it feels like saying hello. like introducing myself. Sometimes, I think it speaks back, not in words, but in stillness, like it's waiting for me. And I wonder, when I'm gone, will the next man hear me? Will he press his ear against my stone and feel the echo I left behind? I hope he does, because I've left something there. A breath, a memory, a whisper. And if the wall truly remembers, then maybe, so will he. It was supposed to be a day like any other. Same cold porridge. Same lifting stones. Same bent backs and silent breath. But something felt off from the first light. The birds didn't sing. The frost didn't melt. And the foreman didn't shout. That alone was strange. He stood still, staring at the ridge, mouth slightly open, as if expecting something. We followed his eyes, but there was nothing there. Just stone, sky, and stillness. Then came the wind. Not strong, not sudden, just wrong. It blew from the east, but the dust fell west. It whispered across the wall, not like a breeze, but like a word being passed from brick to brick. Even the walker paused. His hands trembled. He dropped his stone. The first time I had ever seen that happen. No one picked it up. One of the newer workers began humming. Not loud, not cheerful, just a low, trembling note, like something you hum to yourself when trying to forget a nightmare. He said it was from a song his mother used to sing, but he couldn't remember the words, only the tune. By midday, 5 others were humming the same thing. No one taught them. They just knew. It spread like breath. Even I found myself joining softly, under my breath, not understanding why. And when I looked up, the clouds had stopped moving. That afternoon, a shadow passed overhead. Not a bird, not a cloud, too fast for either, too slow to be chance, just a shape, long, narrow, pointed at both ends, like a blade turned sideways against the sky. It didn't make a sound, not even a windbreak, but every worker paused, every hand froze, every heart stumbled. No orders were given, no one shouted. We simply stood, together, watching the sky forget how to move. Later, we found a section of the wall had changed. Only a small corner, just enough to notice. The bricks there had become black. Not burnt, not soot-covered, just black. Like the color had been drained from them, or replaced with something heavier than shadow. When touched, they vibrated, softly, like strings pulled tight. The humming stopped after that. Even the young ones, even the walker, especially the walker, he wouldn't go near that section, just walked around it. A wider path, a respectful arc, like circling a grave. That night the girl came back, the one no one talks about, the one who doesn't belong. She stood on the same ridge, hair unmoving in the wind, eyes fixed on the wall, but this time she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a figure taller than any man I've seen, wearing nothing, holding nothing, just standing, glowing slightly, and when the moon passed behind a cloud, they were gone, as if swallowed, not by the dark, but by time. I tried to draw the shape I'd seen in the sky, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't not. The image burned behind my eyes. A curved blade, long, hollow, sharp in its silence. I drew it in the dust near my cot. The next morning, it was gone. Not swept, not disturbed. Erased, clean, polished, like the wall itself had disagreed with my memory. Later that day, we heard a song, not the humming, not the low-throat mourning of the tired. This was different. It came from above, soft, high, piercing. No words, no rhythm, just a tone that vibrated through our ribs. Some covered their ears. Some fell to their knees. One man began to weep. Not loud, just the quiet tears of someone remembering something too big to carry. That evening, the fire wouldn't light. Dry wood. No wind, but the flames refused. The sparks jumped, hissed, flickered, then died. Every time. So we sat in the cold, wrapped in ourselves, listening to the sky, not for sound, but for silence. A silence so heavy it pressed into your bones like the weight of another stone. The next morning, there were fewer of us. Not from death, not from running, just gone. Blankets left untouched, stones still waiting, but no bodies, no footprints, as if they'd been lifted out of the world, like loose tiles in a floor. Even the guards were silent. They didn't call roll. They didn't mark the tiles. Just stood with their arms crossed watching the mist roll in. The section we were building suddenly didn't match the plans. The slope shifted. The measurements failed. Every time we placed a row, the foundation tilted slightly, subtly, against what had been drawn. After the third correction, the foreman gave up. He stared at the wall, then turned his back, and walked away. Not down the mountain, just away. No one stopped him. No one followed. That night, his tools were gone. So was his tile. Now, no one uses the term construction. They just say, the wall is growing, like a tree, or a wound. Something that heals by stretching, by covering, one man whispered. It's not being built, it's being remembered. I didn't know what he meant, but I felt it, deep in my teeth, in my knees, in my thoughts, as if the stones had been here before, and we were only reassembling a memory. We still carry, because that's all we can do. And when we place a stone now, we listen. For a hum, for a shift, for a sigh. Because the wall is breathing, and we are inside its dream. It began with a dream I didn't have. I woke up knowing something I shouldn't. A detail, a path, a face, but no dream. Only certainty. That morning, I walked straight to a section I'd never worked on, far from the group, half finished, quiet. No one stopped me. No one noticed. I touched a single stone, dull, gray, warm, and whispered a name. Not mine, but it answered, with silence. And I knew I'd been here before, even though I hadn't. That entire day felt backward. The sun rose in the right place, but the shadows leaned wrong. The air smelled like it did back in the rice fields, damp, sweet, green, but there is no green here, not for miles. And when I blinked, for just a moment, the wall looked unfinished. I don't mean incomplete. I mean, still deciding what to be. Like it hadn't made up its mind yet. Like it was watching us build and waiting to approve. That night, I carved a circle into the dirt. Small, simple, unbroken. When I woke, it had become a spiral. Tighter, deeper, drawn with precision my fingers couldn't manage. Beside it lay a stone I didn't recognize. It was smooth, black, polished, and humming. very softly. I buried it, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to remember it later, or worse, forget it completely. The younger workers talk less now, not because of rules, but because of rhythm. They move like they've done this before, hands finding balance faster, eyes never asking questions. I caught one of them talking to a stone, not mumbling, conversing, pausing, as if listening to a reply. I waited until he left. Then I touched that stone. It was still warm, as if breath had passed through it. And beneath my fingers, I felt kindness. The foreman is gone. No one replaced him. No guards were assigned to his tent. His tools remain. His records remain. But his presence has been erased, not removed. The older men say, "He didn't leave," he concluded, like a sentence or a book. They say the wall decides when you're done, and if it's ready, you're gone. Simple as that. I tried to leave once. Not far. Just down the western trail, where the air gets dry and the wind carries dust without smell. Every step felt heavier, not in body, in thought. My memories dulled. Names faded. Even my own footsteps grew quieter. The trees there leaned the wrong way, toward the wall, as if listening or longing. I turned back before I forgot why I'd gone. When I returned, no one asked where I'd been, but the walker nodded at me just once and kept walking. They say the wall isn't for war anymore, that the old purpose to keep others out was a lie, that it's a boundary for something older, not people, but time, a border between memory and forgetting, between waking and sleep. I believe them now, because I saw a man vanish yesterday, not collapse, not fall. He walked into the fog at dawn and never walked out. The others said he'd gone ahead to scout the path, but the next day I found his tile, on top of a stone, as if the wall had tagged him, marked, returned. The girl came again, but not to the ridge this time. She stood in the middle of the site, looking directly at me. Her eyes weren't eyes, not empty but vast, like wells, like open doors with no floor on the other side. She pointed to a half-laid section, then vanished. We don't speak of her aloud, but when I brought it up to the cook, he simply said, "Some echoes take shape." That was all. Then he returned to his fire and stirred water that never boiled. I started seeing flashes of lives I never lived. Moments. A man standing on a balcony watching soldiers march. A woman pulling reeds from a flooded riverbank. A child staring at the stars, not from fear, but because she remembered them from before she was born. These weren't dreams. They were insertions. Not like something added, but something long buried, nudging forward. One image returned again and again. A table of black stone, empty, except for one object, a single wax tablet. Unwritten, warm. When I asked another worker if he'd ever dreamed of the wall, he laughed, then stopped, then stared at me, then said, "We don't dream anymore." I asked why. He said, "Because we're inside one now. There are no maps here, only roots burned into souls. No clocks, only hunger, only fatigue. Time doesn't move the same anymore. Sometimes the sun rises twice. Sometimes the shadows stretch wrong, loop around, disobey the stones. I caught my own shadow once doing something I wasn't. It reached for a tool I hadn't lifted, then fell back into sync. No one believed me, but I've stopped doubting the things I see, only the ones I forget. One evening, the walker sat, just sat. No stone, no motion, no silence, even only waiting. I asked him, "Are you done?" He looked at me and said, "No, I've just returned to the part I missed. I didn't understand. Still don't. But now, when I pass that section, I place my hand on the stone there, and I feel completion, like a page turned. Even if I don't know the language, the wall isn't growing anymore. It's remembering itself. And we are the fingers retracing a forgotten sentence. One brick at a time, one breath, one silence, until the meaning returns. I don't know how long I've been here anymore. My hands remember more than my mouth can say. My feet know the paths better than my eyes. The wall no longer feels like something I work on. It feels like something I serve. Not as a slave. Not quite. As something older, deeper, like a monk or a ghost. This morning, my breath fogged the air, but so did the stones. Yes, the stones. Tiny clouds rising from them. Condensation? Heat? I don't know. But I saw it. Soft exhalations. As if the wall was breathing beside us. Not fast. Not labored. Slow. Measured. Alive. No one speaks of it. But everyone sees. The tools last longer now. Wood doesn't splinter as quickly. Blades dull slower. Even our bones, they still ache, but in a way that feels expected. Not cruel, just natural. I pressed my palm to one of the older bricks. It pulsed. Once. Gently. Like a heart resting. A man collapsed beside me today. No cause. No wound. Just folded in on himself, like a note that had been read too many times. When we lifted him, he was warm. Not dead. Just gone. Not unconscious beyond that. Eyes open. Breathing slow. But unreachable. They laid him beside the humming stone pile, and he smiled. A wide, peaceful smile. That was worse than death, because it looked like understanding. I've begun hearing the wall hum at night. A low tone, barely there. It resonates in my ribs, in my teeth. Sometimes it matches my heartbeat. Other times, it doesn't. But it's there, always. A reminder that I am not alone, not truly, because the wall doesn't forget. Even when I want to. A new group arrived. Fresh hands. Wider eyes. They don't yet bend their knees when lifting. They haven't learned how to walk across gravel without waking the ground. They look at the sky too much. That will pass. One of them asked me what the wall is for. I didn't answer, because I no longer know how to describe it. Not as defense. Not as warning. It's not for anyone. It is. That's enough. One night, I followed the walker. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did. Maybe he let me. He climbed a path none of us use, one that loops far around the southern ridge. There's nothing there but loose stones and an old watchtower. At the top, he stopped, looked out, said, "It's almost ready." I asked what. He didn't answer, just placed his hand on the tower and whispered something I didn't catch. The next day, the tower had a new layer. No one built it, but it was there, like it had grown in the night. The cook boiled something strange today. Not food, not water. It steamed like memory, thick, copper-colored vapor that made the air heavy. He called it remembrance tea. Only the oldest workers drank it. I asked for a sip. He stared at me long, then nodded. It tasted like smoke and rain, and for one breath, I remembered my mother's laugh. Not the sound, the feeling, and I wept into my bowl. They say the emperor once visited the wall. Years ago, before us, he stood on the highest point and declared it immortal, but the wall didn't answer. It stayed still, listening, measuring. They say the next day he left without speaking and never returned. Some say he saw the truth. Others say the wall showed him something he wasn't ready for. I think he realized it wasn't his wall. Not anymore. I've seen symbols now. Not painted, not carved, appearing. Light lines across the stones like veins under skin. They glow briefly, pulse once, then vanish. Not everyone sees them, but I do. Their language. Not words, but structure. Syntax without letters. And I think I'm beginning to read it. Not with my eyes, but with my memory, with my dreams. One dream returned last night. The wax tablet, the black table, but this time the tablet had writing. I couldn't read it, but I knew what it meant. A single phrase. You were always here. I woke with that in my mouth. I said it aloud, and the stone beside my cot split down the middle, softly, neatly. Inside was another tile, mine, but older, burned, marked with the same number 1643. I didn't tell anyone, but I think the wall did, because the next day, 3 men moved aside when I passed. Not in fear, in recognition. They nodded and kept working, as if I'd become part of the pattern. Not a leader, not a prophet, just another necessary silence. A brick with breath. That afternoon it rained sideways, not from the clouds, from the ridge. A wind carried it, fine mist that hissed on stone, and when it stopped, the wall was dry, bone dry. The rest of us soaked, coughing, but the wall gleamed, as if water wasn't allowed to stay on it anymore, like it had chosen what to absorb and what to shed. They say we are fewer now, but no one counts, because the wall counts for us, not in numbers, in names. And when a man vanishes, a new shape appears, a bend, a tower, a groove. Each loss leaves a structure, and each structure remembers the hand that lifted it. Even mine, even yours. We carry on, not because we must, but because the wall listens, and because somewhere, deep inside the stone, it is dreaming of something. And we are the dream, one step at a time, one breath, one silence, one stone. The wall has a heartbeat. I'm sure of it now. Not metaphor, not poetry. A steady rhythm deep inside the stone, faint, constant, measured. I pressed my palm to a freshly laid section, and it pulsed. Once. Then again, and I realized I wasn't feeling it in my hand, but in my chest, my ears, my teeth. The stone was sinking with me, or I was sinking with it. They called for volunteers today, not for labor, for entry. A tunnel had opened, appeared overnight, near the western ridge. No digging, no blast, just a dark, rounded mouth in the stone slope, smooth, symmetrical, and waiting. The overseers didn't understand it, but the guards were nervous. They wouldn't go near it. So they asked for someone with a mark. 3 lines or more. I had 4. I stepped forward. So did the walker. They gave us torches, but we didn't need them. The walls glowed inside. Not bright just enough. Pale light in pulsing veins, tracing paths like roots or rivers. The tunnel sloped down, gently, then sharply. We didn't speak. The walker didn't even look back. He just walked, like he remembered where to go. I followed, not brave, just already chosen. After the 3rd bend, sound changed. Footsteps stopped echoing. Breath grew louder. The stone no longer felt solid, it felt aware. I touched it, warm, and the glow pulsed beneath my fingers. For one terrifying second, I thought it was alive. Then I realized, it's not alive. It's listening. We reached a chamber. Not large, not grand, but clean, perfectly carved, edges so precise they made your eyes water. In the center, a pedestal, and on the pedestal, a stone, black, round, silent. The walker approached first. He placed his hand on it, said nothing, then stepped back, and waited. I followed. I didn't know what to say, so I said what the wall had whispered to me once in a dream. I remember. The stone warmed, and I saw everything. Flashes, 1,000 lives, men laying bricks in the rain, women marking patterns in the dirt, children singing to piles of mortar. I saw a version of me, not me, but close, placing a stone, smiling, then vanishing in a shimmer of dust. The wall had always existed, not as structure, but as intent. We weren't building it. We were recovering it. From time, from forgetting, from ourselves. The vision faded. The chamber pulsed. And then, silence. The walker bowed to the stone. A deep, reverent movement. I followed. Not because I understood, but because I needed to. And when we rose, a door opened. Not physically, just understanding. We turned back, walked the tunnel in silence. The light followed us out. When we emerged, the others stared. They didn't speak. They didn't question. They just stepped aside. The guards refused to meet our eyes. The tunnel entrance was gone, sealed with perfect stone. No seam, no crack, as if it had never been there. But it had. I still feel it in my hands. Since that day, no one has died. Not visibly, not violently. They simply conclude. A sigh, a pause, a soft collapse, and the wall reshapes slightly, welcoming them. Not consuming, incorporating. The cook stopped cooking. Now he writes, not on parchment, on leaves, with ash, strange symbols, curves, loops, lines that feel older than sound. I asked him what they meant. He smiled and said, instructions. Then he burned them. The ash curled in a perfect spiral and disappeared into the wind. I've stopped dreaming, but I remember other people's dreams. The child who saw the stars blinking back. The woman who sang to a carved handprint. The old man who carried bricks made of fire and wept as they cooled. None of them are here, but I know their names. Even if I never speak them, even if they were never mine. The walker doesn't carry stones anymore. He walks the perimeter now, touching bricks, marking lines, humming something with no melody, but deep resonance. We call him the reader now, not because he reads books, but because the wall shows him things, and he understands them. I sometimes think the wall was never meant to be finished, that each stone is a sentence, each tower a breath, that we are building language, not defense, a grammar of memory written in mass and silence. And maybe one day, when the last stone is placed, someone will understand the message, not with mine, but with being I still carry, even now, even after the tunnel, because it matters. The lifting, the placing, the breath between, it matters, because it means I'm still remembering, and the wall is still listening, and somewhere, deep beneath all of this, something is waiting to understand. They never told us who started it. The wall. There are stories, yes. Legends passed in broken sentences between bites of rice and gulps of silence. Some say an emperor commanded it. Others say a god whispered its pattern into the dust. But I no longer believe either. I think the wall began when someone forgot something they couldn't afford to lose, and needed to build a shape to hold it. Today, I touched the oldest brick I could find, low on the eastern face, worn smooth, cracked at the edge. No mark, no tool lines, just presence. The moment my fingers rested there, I saw him, a man, not young, not old, carrying a stone on his back, but not walking, standing, still, looking at a place that didn't exist yet, and whispering, "Begin." That vision stayed with me all day. Every time I blinked, I saw him. That moment, that breath, that decision. No orders, no blueprints, just need. And from that, need the wall, not to protect, not to divide, but to remember. Because forgetting, I think, is worse than death. I asked the cook if he ever wondered who built the first stone. He didn't answer. He just pushed a small bowl of fire toward me. Inside, 5 pebbles, each painted red, each warm to the touch. He said, "Put them in the wall tomorrow." That was all. No reason, no explanation, but I knew better than to ask. Some instructions don't come from people. They come from remembering. There is a boy now. No one knows where he came from. One day, he was just here. Small, silent, always barefoot. He doesn't work, doesn't eat with us. He just walks along the wall, beside the path, never the same direction twice. Sometimes he hums. Sometimes he touches the stones. And every night the section he touched glows faintly. Not bright, just noticed. Like the wall is acknowledging him, or following. A guard tried to stop him once. Reached out, grabbed his arm. The boy looked up, said nothing, but the guard froze. Not from fear, from silence. He hasn't spoken since. Still breathes. Still moves. But only in straight lines now. As if following something we can't see. We call him Thread. I laid the 5 red pebbles into the wall at dawn. Each one fit perfectly. No chisel. No hammer. The mortar welcomed them. Swallowed them. And when I stepped back, a breeze passed, warm, dry, soft. The only wind that touched me all day. That night, I dreamed of 5 faces. All different. All smiling. Not at me. At each other. Then they vanished. But the warmth stayed. The reader spoke to me today. Only 4 words. You're close to it. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't need to. Because every morning now, when I carry a stone, I feel it humming. A deeper rhythm, lower than bone, older than sky, as if the wall itself is leading me toward something, a center, a truth, a name. Names have power here. We rarely say them, not out loud, not unless we're ready to offer them, because once spoken, the wall remembers them. Forever, there is no forgetting here, only becoming. I saw a tower finish itself. 2 nights ago, we'd been laying bricks for days. Then, after the 3rd shift, it was complete. No workers claimed it. No records showed it. But it was done. Perfect. Smooth. Tall. Silent. And on the top brick, a mark. A handprint. Small. Thin. Pressed deep. It wasn't human. Not exactly. But it remembered one. One of the older men said he'd seen it before. Long ago. As a child. In the south, where the sand runs red and the wind talks sideways. He said the handprint is a seal, not a warning. A signature. Like the wall saying, "This was mine before you." They say the wall raps now, that it's curving in on itself. Not randomly, purposefully. The path we carry stones through now bends back toward places we worked months ago. And when we arrive, the stones are gone, already laid, already aged, as if we were late for something that hasn't happened yet, or early for something that already did. I stopped trying to understand time here. It's not broken, just rewritten, by stone, by memory, by us. The boy left a mark today, a spiral drawn in soot near the well, the same spiral I'd seen in the chamber below, only smaller, more precise. By dusk, it was gone, but not erased, absorbed. That night, the wall glowed in curves, not straight lines. The entire southern face bent slightly, not visibly, but the sound of our steps changed, softer, rounder. I whispered a name into the wall tonight. Not mine, my mother's. Just once. Soft. Not to test it. To honor it. The wall warmed, and the brick beneath my hand turned pale. Not white. Not empty. Pale like a breath caught between 2 sentences. And for 1 second, I heard her laugh. In the stone. Then silence. But not absence. Memory. The reader says we're near the 1st circle, where the wall began, and where it will end. He said, the wall isn't a line, it's a sentence written in circles. I asked, is that why we build? He nodded, and said, to complete the thought, tomorrow we reach the center, or what remains of it. They say no one who enters that place returns the same. If they return at all, I don't know what I'll find. But I carry the next stone differently. Not as weight, as answer. The center is not a location. It's a sensation. You don't walk to it. You recognize it. Like a dream you forgot you were having. And when you arrive, you know. Because the stones stop humming and start listening. It was just before dawn when I felt it. The slope didn't change. The light didn't shift. But the air held something new. Thicker. Warmer. Like walking into a held breath. The reader turned to me. Didn't speak. Just pointed. And I stepped forward. Not brave. Not sure. But certain. The center is a hollow. Not large. Not deep. A bowl cut into the ridge, perfectly circular, lined with stones so smooth it looks melted. At the exact middle, a single stone, different, not larger, not brighter, just quieter. Not silent, but so perfectly still that you feel it, like a heart that stopped but kept presence. We stood around it. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the wind stayed out. I knelt, placed my hands on the center stone, and felt everything. Not pain, not vision, just understanding. No words, only shape. Formless but complete, like feeling the weight of a memory before it's remembered. I wept, not from sorrow, from recognition, like meeting someone you loved in another life. The reader said, "This is not the beginning of the wall, it is the end of forgetting." And then he stepped back, his eyes wide, his chest still. He didn't breathe for a full minute, then sighed and walked away. He hasn't spoken since, but the wall glows where he walks, now always, like it remembers his silence as sacred. I stayed, watched the stone, waited, and after an hour, it blinked, not with eyes, not with light, but with presence, a shift, a moment, a yes. I reached into my satchel, pulled the brick I was meant to place that day, and gently set it beside the central stone. It clicked, not with sound, but with fit, like the final word in a sentence written by breath. The ground shivered once, then calmed. That night, I didn't sleep, not from restlessness, because sleep felt unnecessary. I lay with my hands on the soil and felt the thoughts of the mountain, slow, kind, curious, not words, shapes, questions, not for answers but for sharing, like the wall was asking, "Do you remember me?" And I answered, with my silence, yes. When I woke, if I ever truly slept, I found a mark beside me, a spiral, thin, drawn in ash and dew. But this time, there was a center, a dot, pressed deep, as if the spiral was finally finished, and it had arrived somewhere. The others began to follow, one by one. They didn't need to be told. They felt it, a pull, a center of gravity in their bones. We came in silence, placed our final stones in a ring around the core. No tools, no plans, just rhythm, breath, memory. The wall had curved inward. We hadn't noticed, but now we stood surrounded, not enclosed, embraced, held by the structure we thought we were building, but which had been building us this whole time. And then it happened. The wall spoke, not with sound, not with voice, but in every stone, a single phrase, so large it didn't fit in the sky, so gentle it didn't disturb the wind. We heard it not with ears, but with being. It said, "You remember, now become." And the light came, not blinding, not burning, soft, blue like quiet oceans, gold like warm hands. It didn't come from above. It rose from below, from within the stone, from under our feet, from our own ribs, and it wrapped us, slowly, completely. And we weren't afraid. We didn't flinch, because it wasn't foreign. It was recognition. I saw the first stone again, not as image, as self. I was him, and he was me. The breath, the whisper, the moment of placing something in the ground and saying, "This matters." That was the beginning. Not the command, not the emperor, not the need for borders, the care. And then I saw the wall, not as line, not as tower, as memory, vast, alive, spiraling across time, built not in stone but in silence and choice and breath. Each brick a name, each corner a decision, each collapse a forgetting, and every rebuilding a remembering. Then it all folded in, not collapsed, completed, like a book closing itself because it had nothing more to say. We stood inside the center, no wall around us, only sky, only stone underfoot, only memory in the air. And we knew the wall was done, but we weren't, because remembering never ends, only deepens. And now we carry not bricks. But the story, when we thought the wall was done, it didn't vanish. It breathed. It didn't collapse. It waited. We stood at the center in stillness, surrounded by memory made solid, stone that felt like a conversation mid-sentence. And even though we felt finished, the sky didn't close. The ground didn't settle. The silence didn't last, because walls don't just remember what they are. They remember what comes next. And something was coming. It didn't start with sound. It started with steps. We heard them first. Light, even, unhurried. Footsteps across stone. Not booted, not armored, but certain. The kind of steps made by those who know where they are, even if the path beneath them has never been walked before. We turned, but saw nothing. Not at first. Then the dust shifted, and they appeared. Not a crowd, just a pair. One tall, one smaller. Not child, not old. Somewhere in between. Clothed in linen dyed by sunlight. Skin darkened by journey, not blood. Eyes unblinking, not unkind. They walked along the inside of the spiral, the very curvature we had just completed, but they were not retracing our steps. They were continuing something else. I stepped forward. The tall one nodded, said nothing, but offered a small stone, smooth, circular, marked with 3 spirals etched into one another, like memory folding into time. I reached for it and paused, because I had felt this shape before. In a dream? In the chamber below? No. In my own ribs, right between the heartbeats. The smaller figure spoke, voice high but dry, like papyrus left too long in sun. You remember because you were built to, and I didn't ask, who are you? Because I already knew the shape of the answer. Not builders, not soldiers, not kings. They were witnesses. Witnesses don't create. They don't command. They observe. And remember, not for themselves, for the next. They walked with us in silence. Step for step, we passed the curve of the final wall. The stone beneath our feet hummed gently. Not a warning, not a welcome, just recognition. That sound when a page is turned. That silence when breath holds still before a word. The witnesses led us past the known, to a second spiral, hidden behind the ridge. Not newer, older, weathered by sand, erased by time, covered in ash and roots. A forgotten circle, incomplete, 3 bricks missing, and I understood. This had been tried before. The reader stepped forward, his fingers shaking. He touched one edge, and it lit. Not bright, not burning, but with warmth, a shimmer that moved outward like ripples across water. the spiral reacted, and for a moment I saw them all. The first builders, the lost hands, the vanished lines, not dead, just paused, waiting for the next sentence. The taller witness offered 3 stones, 1 to me, 1 to the reader, 1 to the child. Yes, the boy had returned, barefoot, smiling faintly, silent as ever, his eyes clearer now, and older. We didn't speak, we didn't ask, just stepped into the missing spaces, placed our stones, and the ground below us sighed. A door opened, not physical, not carved, but perception shifted, where there had been only dirt now an entrance, dark, inviting, and deep. No stairs, no torches, just gravity and memory. The child entered first. He didn't look back. The reader followed, humming low. Then me. The others stayed, some out of fear, some out of awe, some because they knew this part wasn't theirs. Inside, the silence was warm, like skin on stone. The walls were smooth, not built, formed, as if they'd always been there, waiting to be found. The deeper we went, the slower time felt. My thoughts came less quickly. My breath stretched longer. The world above seemed folded, like a page turned and pinned behind this one. At the deepest point, a circle, smaller than before. In its center, a bowl. In the bowl, sand. Just sand, but not empty. Alive. Each grain vibrated faintly, rhythmically, as if the bowl was remembering something, trying to replay it, trying to say, "This is where it truly began." I stepped forward, reached toward the sand, but the child touched my arm, shook his head, and whispered, "Only when it's needed, not when ready, not when worthy, when needed." And I understood. The bowl holds the original shape, the first memory, the undiluted idea, and once touched it shares everything. All at once, all at cost. We sat, not to wait, not to guard, to listen, because the bowl was speaking, not in words, in echoes, stories older than language, fears older than shadow, hopes shaped like fire before it knew its name. The reader wept, but not like a man grieving, like someone coming home. The child placed both hands on the edge of the bowl, closed his eyes, and smiled, and the sand lifted, spiraled into the air, floating, forming a shape, not a face, a map, not of places, not of roads, of choices. Every path taken, every stone placed, every moment of memory that made the wall possible, and every version where it failed, collapsed, was forgotten. The witnesses had been watching all of it, not to stop it, to preserve it, to prepare the next. The map shimmered, began folding inward, collapsing gently, not ending, condensing, until it became a single spiral, the same one we'd drawn, the same one we'd walked, the same one inside the center of every brick. And the child whispered, "Now you carry it." Not the map, not the sand, the shape, the meaning, the memory that would unfold again, somewhere else, someone else, because walls don't stay where they are built, not truly. They travel, through breath, through silence, through those who remember. We walked back, not up, not down, just back, And when we emerged, the witnesses were gone. Only footprints, only calm, only the sound of bricks settling one final time. The wall no longer needs to be seen, but it is everywhere now. In the rhythm of a drum, in the line of a poem, in the way one hand presses into another's back during a goodbye. You feel it. You know it. And someday you'll be called to build again. Not because you must, but because you remember. The wall is behind us now. Not forgotten. Not left. Not diminished. It is simply complete. And yet, every step we take forward carries part of it. In dust on our shoulders, in rhythm in our breath, in silence behind our words. The world beyond feels new, but not strange. More like waking into a place you once visited in childhood, where the furniture has shifted, but the scent is the same. We travel without purpose, no destination, no map, just direction, and a rhythm in our steps that the earth seems to understand. It doesn't fight us. It doesn't guide us. It listens. We pass through the forest of still pines, each tree older than any story, each root curved like fingers cradling forgotten names. At night, the wind moved beneath the branches, not through them, as if it remembered how to move quietly, out of respect or reverence. One morning, we came to a clearing of ash, not destruction, not charred trees or blackened bones, just ash, clean, smooth, unbroken. Not a flake stirred in the breeze, not a footprint left behind. As if the ash wasn't residue but foundation, I knelt, scooped a handful. It didn't cling to my fingers, didn't blow away. It settled, back into place, unbothered. The child stood in the center, hands raised, eyes closed. The reader circled him, tracing lines with his feet. The rest of us waited, not knowing why, just knowing how. The wind stopped. The birds hushed, and then a glow. From below, a spiral of light in the ash, forming itself. Slowly, patiently, the reader looked up, spoke softly. This is where the others will come. This is where memory will rise again. And this time, it will choose to stay. We laid no bricks, built no walls, but we prepared the ground. Not with tools, with thought. We each knelt, placed one palm flat into the ash, closed our eyes, and remembered something we had once forgotten, a kindness never repaid, a song we never finished, a name we whispered only once. The ash accepted it. Didn't burn, didn't change. Just recorded. That night we did not dream, but when we woke the ash had risen, not scattered, lifted, in gentle towers, thin pillars no taller than a breath, dozens, hundreds, each one glowing faintly, marking a thought now held, not lost. We knew then the wall was not the end. It was only the first shape. Memory does not want to be buried. It wants to be given. The child began to walk again, toward the west. No one questioned. We followed. The hills that came after were soft, rolled like sleep. Grass whispered in spirals beneath our steps. We passed no towns, no roads, but we saw evidence. Places where someone almost built, almost remembered. A line of stones arranged like a question. A circle of trees bent toward the same direction. A shallow well, carved but never filled. places where memory once stirred, then went still again, waiting for us, or someone like us. The reader found a shell in the middle of a dry plain. No ocean for 100 miles. He held it to his ear, listened, smiled, then buried it again, not to lose it, but to plant it, as if the memory of water needed to be kept safe beneath dry soil. On the 12th night, the stars aligned above us in a spiral. Perfect. Impossibly so. And no one asked how, because we already knew the answer. The sky remembers too. That night, the child finally spoke again. He turned to us. Voice like wind through old windows. The wall was the first word, but now comes the sentence. He led us to a hill shaped like a dome. At the top, nothing, only earth. He knelt, pressed both hands to the ground, and sang, a low, humming tone. No melody, just vibration. The reader joined. Then the others. Then me, each voice a layer, each note a memory. The hill responded. Soft tremors beneath us. The ground warmed, then pulsed. And when we stopped, a door appeared. It wasn't stone. It wasn't wood. Just absence. Like space remembered, it had a shape, and gave it back. We entered. Inside, a chamber of light. No flame, just glow. Like dust remembering the sun. The walls were smooth. No markings. No corners. Only curve. It felt like being inside a thought, half-formed, whole in intention. At the center, another bowl, but this one was empty. The child gestured, and we understood. We each stepped forward and offered one thing, not from our hands, from ourselves. I gave it the laugh of someone I had once known, the sound of my father breathing just before he died, the shape of my mother's back as she worked at dawn. No object, only memory. The reader gave a word, but not aloud. A word he had never spoken. A word only the wall knew. The others gave fragments. Moments. Names. The child gave silence. And the bowl held it all. When it was full, it shimmered. Then, stilled. Solidified. Not with ice. With knowing, we left it there. That bowl. That chamber. Not to return, but to let it be found. By those who will come after. By the next witnesses. The next rememberers. By the ones who will need to build. Not because they're told to, but because they remember how. We left the chamber. The door faded. The hill closed behind us. Not sealed. Just forgotten until it's needed again. And then we walked. Not forward. Not back. Just outward. Radiating like lines in sand. Each to our own path. Carrying the memory. Not as burden. As language. I no longer look for the wall. Because I carry it. When I see a child draw a circle in mud, I remember. When I hear someone hum in perfect rhythm with silence, I remember. When I pass a stone and feel it breathe, I remember. The wall is not stone. It is memory made patient. And it will rise again, wherever we are brave enough to listen. They say wind carries voices. But what if it also carries decisions? Not just sounds, but the moments behind them. This chapter begins in a valley where the wind never moves in a straight line, where travelers feel watched, not by eyes, but by the shape of the silence between gusts, where memory does not sit in stone or ash, but flows endlessly, untouchably, across the skin. This is where our story continues, and maybe where it always was. We came to the valley at dusk. No sign told us its name. No path led clearly through. It was as though the land itself had paused, unsure whether it wanted to be remembered. The wind greeted us, not with welcome, but with questions. Shifting, testing, tugging at the edge of our thoughts like a friend we had almost forgotten. The child knelt, pressed one hand to the ground, and whispered, "It is waiting." The reader took the lead. He moved like he'd been here before. Not recently. Not in this lifetime. But in the memory of a life carved into the back of another. The wind circled him. Never pushed. Never guided. But acknowledged. And that was enough. We walked with open hands. Not to carry. To feel. The air was thick with something older than time. Not power. Not magic. But witness. Every step felt like a page turning. Every glance, a paragraph passed between breaths. I could feel the valley asking us, "Do you remember what you lost here?" And somewhere in my chest, a part of me whispered, "Yes." At the valley's heart, a lone tree. Bent. Cracked. Alive. Its bark twisted in spirals. Its roots half exposed. Its leaves gone. And yet it stood. Not growing. Enduring. The child approached first. Laid both palms on the trunk. The tree didn't move. But the wind changed. It hushed. Not calmed, focused. As if listening not to the boy, but through him. We circled the tree. 12 of us. Without instruction. Each step falling in sync with something deeper than rhythm. We didn't speak. The reader traced lines in the dirt. Spirals again. But broken this time. Incomplete. He stopped. Looked to me. And said, "We left something behind here. Long ago. I didn't ask what. I already knew the answer had no name. We slept beside the tree. Not because we were tired. Because it asked us to. In the night, the wind returned. Soft. Persistent. It pressed on our eyelids. Wove through our hair. Brushed our cheeks. It was searching. Not for things. For truths. I dreamed of voices. Thousands. Not shouting. Not whispering. Just being. Layered on each other like stone and mortar. A tower of breath and memory. They were not asking for help. They were offering presence. One voice stood out. Clear. Low. Unmistakably mine. But older. Tired. In a way I hadn't reached yet. It said, "Remember the wind." It was the first archive. Then silence. And I woke. In the morning, the tree had changed. No new leaves. No movement. But something carved into the bark. Not by knife. By air. Thin etchings spiraling outward. Textless. Yet filled with meaning. The reader studied it. The child traced it with one finger. And I understood. These were wind lines. Trails of memory carried by breath. Like map lines on skin. The reader handed me a small pouch. Inside, dust. Pale. Fine. Fragrant. I recognized it. From the spiral of ash. The memory ground. He nodded. I walked to the tree. Poured it gently at the base. The wind caught some. Lifted it. Spun it. Then released it over the roots. The tree shivered. And for the first time I heard it. Not creaking. Speaking. Not in words. In echo. a vibration that began in the soles of my feet and rose into my ribs, a rhythm I remembered from the wall. Only this time, it wasn't foundation. It was release. The tree had held this memory for lifetimes. Now it was ready to let go. The wind rushed outward, fast, gentle, massive, not a gust, a breath, from every direction at once. And when it passed, the valley had changed. We stood in a field now, flat, soft, blank. The tree was gone, but the wind still moved in spirals. And in the center, a single stone, smooth, black, unmarked. Until we touched it, the child placed his hand first, a pulse, then the reader, a shimmer, then me, a sound, like a note played backwards, and then images, thousands, not in sequence, in shape, moments the wind had carried, held, protected, now open to us. They poured into our thoughts not as memories, but as recognitions. We knew them, even if we never lived them. A woman kneeling by a river, teaching her daughter to fold silence into song. A boy carving spirals into sand, not knowing they would be remembered. A fire built with too much hope, collapsing gently into warmth. Each moment incomplete, until now, because now they had been received. And that is all memory asks for. To arrive, we sat for hours. Days, maybe, letting the wind deliver the rest. Each breath a history, each breeze a fingerprint. And we listened, not as builders, as archives. At dusk on the fourth day, the wind stopped completely. No shift, no air, just stillness. The reader stood, spoke 5 words. It's ready to move on. No one asked what it was, because we were it now. The archive no longer lived in walls or ash. It lived in us. We stood at the edge of the valley, each person looking in a different direction, and for the first time we didn't walk together. We dispersed. One to the mountain, one to the sea, one into the city, one into the desert. Each path chosen not by logic but by rhythm, the rhythm of remembering and letting go. The child remained in the valley. He didn't wave, didn't speak, just stood barefoot in the center, eyes closed, hands open, and the last wind, a single curl of air, rose from the center, spiraled around him, and was gone. I do not know where the others are now. I do not need to, because the wind connects us, each gust a sentence, each silence a space, each memory a letter written in breath, and somewhere someone is listening, just like you are now. There is a place past the edge of most charts, a city not marked on any parchment, not spoken of in songs, but always remembered in dreams. The streets curve like thoughts not quite finished. The buildings lean toward each other like old friends, whispering secrets through stone. No rulers, no gates, no walls, only memory dressed in architecture. This is where I walk next, not to build, not to witness, but to listen to the kind of remembering that lives in voices, not bricks. The first thing I noticed, there were no doors, only archways. Some open, some covered by beads, cloth, or wind, but never locked. The city didn't keep people out. It invited stories in. The air was thick with sound. Not noise, not chatter, but hum, as if every surface vibrated with language unspoken. You didn't need to talk to be heard here. The walls translated your presence, your hesitation, your intent, and the city responded with its shape. I walked without aim. Every turn felt both accidental and inevitable. Streets narrowed, widened, dissolved into gardens, then emerged again as markets with no currency. People moved like memories, unhurried, deliberate, not bound by task, but by meaning. A child passed me, holding nothing. A man followed, holding the same nothing, as if it had been passed. They nodded at each other and smiled. I felt a warmth in my chest, not mine, theirs, but shared with me, because this city did not guard emotion, it shared it. A woman offered me a bowl, empty. I took it. She touched my forehead, then walked away. No words, but I understood. The bowl was not for filling. It was for remembering what hunger once felt like, and for acknowledging I no longer carried it alone. I sat in a square that was also a spiral, tiles of every color arranged in no pattern, yet forming one all the same. A man sat beside me. He wore layers of fabric, none matching. His hands were ink-stained. He looked at me and said, "You've walked through stones, through ash, through wind, but now you walk through names. Here, the stories are not told. They're lived." I nodded. He pointed to my bowl and said, "You've already begun. Every evening the city glows. Not with lamps, not with flame, but with shared memory. Every story lived that day, every feeling exchanged, becomes color, projected gently across windows, balconies, steps. You see not people, but what they meant. The city becomes a reflection of the day's remembering, and every corner glows differently. I wandered into a courtyard with no sky. Its ceiling was smoke, not thick, not choking, just present, like breath left behind. In the center, a spiral painted on stone. I sat in it and felt voices fill the air, not directed at me, not from me, just through me. One voice asked, "What story do you carry that has no words?" And I replied, "The one shaped like a wall, but made from silence." The spiral pulsed. Accepted. I met a girl who spoke to buildings. Not out loud. She touched them, one hand on each surface, then closed her eyes, and the walls listened. I asked her once what they say. She answered, "They ask if we still love what we've forgotten." I didn't understand. Not then. But later, as I touched a wall myself, and it warmed beneath my fingers, I realized this city was not built. It was invited. By memory. By forgiveness. By the stories that refuse to die. No one owns a home here. You stay where the city feels your presence belongs. And you leave when the feeling changes. Not because you're unwanted, because your story has moved. And the city listens. Always. I passed an alley of mirrors, each reflection older than the last, until the final one was not my face, but my memory of someone who once waited for me to come home. They smiled and disappeared. There is a library in the city. No shelves, no books, only cushions. You sit, you remember, and the room writes it, not with ink, with shape. Your story becomes architecture, and when you leave, others may sit in your story and feel your memory. Not read it, feel it. I stayed in the city for 7 days, or 7 years. Time behaves differently. where remembering is the currency. I didn't count days, only spirals. Each one I traced with my feet or fingers opened a part of me I didn't know had been forgotten. On the final day, a child approached me. Not the same child from the wall, but the same eyes. They offered me a map, blank. Only one thing written on it: build nowhere, remember everywhere. And then the child walked into a wall. Not through a door, into the wall, and vanished. That evening, I saw my own story projected across a column of light. The bowl, the ash, the wall, the wind. It ended with an empty archway. An invitation. I stepped through the arch, and the city exhaled, not to dismiss me, to send me with something I hadn't carried in years. Permission to share, not what I saw, but what I had become. Because some places build you not with stone, but with stories that let you breathe again. Not all journeys are walked. Some are remembered first and only then found. This chapter doesn't begin with a road. It begins with absence, where direction used to be, where certainty used to feel warm. You step forward not because you see a path, but because the moment demands you move. And slowly, with each breath, the ground meets you. Like memory laying itself down, one heartbeat at a time. I left the city at dawn, not because the city asked me to go, but because something else had begun whispering in the space behind my ribs. Not a voice, not a name, just pull, a soft insistence that there was more, not beyond, but within, and the only way to reach it was to walk into a place that didn't exist yet. There was no gate, no farewell. The last street simply folded behind me, and I walked into a field of stillness. Grass the color of memory, air that neither moved nor settled, and beneath it all a feeling I hadn't held since the wall. Expectation. I walked for hours, or maybe no time passed at all. The sky changed, but not by sun, by mood. The clouds didn't move. They chose new shapes. Shapes I recognized. A spiral, a hand, a stone. Then came the path. Not underfoot above. A shimmer in the air. A curve, traced by nothing visible. But when I stepped toward it, the grass parted. And there it was. Not a road. Not a trail. A remembering. Soft. Patient. Waiting to be made real by motion. I followed it. The curve widened, then split. Two branches. One curved sharply toward the east. Sharp. Efficient. Familiar. The other looped gently, spiraling slowly westward, toward horizon, toward uncertainty. I did not choose. My feet did. They moved left, and the path continued beneath them, forming itself one footstep at a time. Soon I heard footsteps beside me, but when I turned, no one. Then, laughter. Low, gentle. I knew it. My sister, not her body, not her voice, but the echo she used to leave in a room 10 seconds after she left it. She walked beside me in silence. I didn't look, not out of fear, out of respect, for a memory that was walking itself into being. Then came more footsteps. My father's, one slow, one heavy. He used to walk with a limp no one asked about. Now, even in memory, it persisted, but it no longer felt like a wound. Just rhythm, a rhythm that belonged. I did not cry, not because I was strong, because I was full. Each step they made beside me was a breath I didn't know I needed. Not to move forward, to exist. We came to a stone, not large, but old. So old it looked like it had been remembering longer than there had been people to speak. A spiral etched in its face, not carved, grown. I touched it, and the wind began to move, not in air, in me, through my arms, my spine, my thoughts, and a voice said, "This is the path that forgets you until you remember yourself." And the stone warmed. Behind the stone, the path dissolved again. No curve, no shimmer, just open land. I paused, waited, but the memory beside me did not. They continued, not impatient, not hurried, just certain, and so I followed. The ground changed. Soil gave way to gravel, then to something soft and golden. Not sand, not dust, something like the surface of a dream. I looked down and saw only one set of footprints. Not mine, theirs. The memories that walked beside me were now the ones carrying me. I stopped walking and simply let go. Let the path move me. The land tilted downward, not sharply, more like falling into a long, slow exhale. And I realized this wasn't a place. It was a chamber, inside something much larger than thought. I landed on silence. Not emptiness, not void, a cushion made of breath held too long and waiting to be understood. In the center, a circle of stones. Spiral again, but this time broken, incomplete, one stone missing. And beside the gap, a bowl, empty, waiting. I knew what to do. I sat, closed my eyes, and remembered. Not everything, just one thing. One moment I thought had vanished. My grandfather's hand on mine, his thumb tapping twice. The secret signal he gave me every time he wanted me to feel brave. I placed it in the bowl, not as sound, as shape, and the bowl sang. Not loud, not bright, just sure. It echoed through the spiral, through the chamber, and the stone appeared, the one that was missing. It didn't fall from the sky. It unfolded from the bowl and clicked into place. The spiral closed, and the chamber opened. Not physically, just truthfully. And I saw everything. Not visions, shapes. Every memory that had ever built a path like this. Every moment someone chose to walk toward remembering, instead of away. Every time someone built something, not to survive, but to mean something. The voices returned, this time mine among them, and we said the path was never ahead. It was behind us, waiting to be brought forward. I stood, alone now, but not empty. I turned, and there it was, the path I'd walked, shimmering, made real, stretching out behind me, glowing faintly like a story newly understood. And then it faded, not disappeared, absorbed, into me, because now the path was not underfoot. It was within, and the next one, the next story, the next memory, the next spiral, it would begin when someone else stepped forward into silence and said, "I remember something." Some fires destroy, some illuminate, but a few, the rarest, are made not of heat, but of memory. This chapter begins in the dark, in a place with no flame, no warmth, and yet no cold. Because something waits here that has burned longer than any torch, the kind of fire that doesn't consume, but preserves. We step not into danger, but into revelation. And this fire, it remembers us before we remember it. The chamber was beneath the path. We found it by following the warmth inside our chests. That quiet pressure between the ribs, the one that doesn't hurt, but refuses to be ignored. It led us downward, through silence, through stillness, through walls that had never been carved, only shaped by breath. There was no light, but we could see, not with eyes, with knowing. The walls glowed faintly, not with flame, but with recognition. Each surface responded to us, not when we touched it, when we remembered something in its presence. And the moment we did, the fire appeared. It floated, a single spiral of orange and gold, weightless, soundless, suspended in the center of the chamber, not flickering, not spreading, just being, like it had waited 1,000 lifetimes for someone to return. I stepped closer. The heat wasn't physical, but it reached me all the same. Memories surfaced, ones I hadn't summoned in years. The smell of my brother's hands after he worked with rope. The exact angle of the sun through the kitchen slats the day my mother died. The final sentence I never said to the friend I lost in the flood. They came not with pain, but with clarity, as if the fire was restoring them to their original shape. The reader approached behind me. He didn't speak, just placed both palms out, and the fire responded. It expanded slightly, not wildly, like breath drawn in. The air pulsed once, and then we heard them. Not screams, not songs, voices, dozens, hundreds, layered, soft, deliberate. They were speaking in spirals, not sentences. Each line curved inward, doubling back, echoing itself like memory that never wanted to be complete. They said, "We are what was not lost. We are the warmth between forgetting. We are the fire that remembers you when no one else does." The child stepped into the fire, not into flames, into presence, and the light did not resist. It wrapped around him, gentle, total. He turned toward us, eyes wide, but not afraid. He smiled and said, "This is what was left behind when the first language was broken. This is what survived the forgetting." The fire spun faster, not dangerous, joyful, as if memory itself had found company after centuries of silence. It wrapped around the reader, then around me, and suddenly I was somewhere else. A house I hadn't seen since I was 9. A corner of the floor where I used to press my ear, pretending I could hear the world below. And I could hear it now. Not sounds, not noise, but meanings. The conversation my parents never had. The secret my sister wrote in chalk beneath her bed. The lullaby my grandmother hummed when she thought no one listened. The fire gave it all back, not to overwhelm, to remind. We stepped deeper into the chamber, but it had no edge. Each step was a spiral inward, and the fire followed us. Or maybe we followed it, until we came to the center, there, floating, a bowl. Again, but this one was filled, not with sand, not with ash, but with embers, each ember a story, glowing, waiting. And when we looked closer, we saw faces in the coals. Not ghosts. Possibilities. The reader reached forward, touched one ember, and the chamber filled with warmth. Suddenly, we saw him. Not the reader. The man he used to be. A younger version. Arguing with someone. Building something. Leaving it unfinished. And then regret. Heavy. Quiet. Never spoken aloud. The ember pulsed, and the memory faded. He looked at us. Eyes wet. He said, "I thought I had let that go." The child replied, "You buried it, but memory does not rot. It waits." I touched an ember. It shimmered, and I saw her, the one I had failed. Not by choice, by fear. The moment I turned away, the way she kept waiting, the way I never went back, I exhaled. And for the first time in years, I forgave myself. Not because I deserved it, because the ember gave me permission. Each ember we touched gave back something we thought was gone. Not as punishment, as reunion. Because memory is not only what we remember, it's what remembers us. At the center of the bowl, one ember did not glow. It was cold, gray. Still, the child reached for it. The fire pulsed once, stopped him. Not in anger, in warning. He stepped back, nodded, and said, "That one is for the end." We stayed in the fire for hours, maybe years. Time no longer applied. We left not when we were ready, but when we were whole, each ember now inside us. Each memory no longer separate. We were not carrying weight. We were carrying light. And the fire? It dimmed. Not to disappear, to rest. As we walked out of the chamber, we turned back. The bowl was gone. The embers vanished. But in our chests, a warmth remained. The kind that doesn't fade. Because once memory has burned itself into you, you become fire. And some fires, they never burn down. They burn through. Some places are never reached by foot. They arrive by memory, by breath, by choice. This chapter begins where the fire left us not in ash, but in light. Ahead, there is no road, only distance, and across it, something calling, not with urgency, with recognition, a place we have never seen but have always felt, a crossing that cannot be made with tools, only with truth. The fire had dimmed, but it had not gone. Its warmth remained behind our ribs, not as heat, as presence. We stepped outside the chamber, expecting the same world, but it had changed. Or perhaps we had changed enough to see it differently. The sky was wider, the air clearer, and in front of us, a cliff. Not jagged, not hostile, just sudden, a clean edge, where the land had chosen to pause. Beyond it, a stretch of nothing. Not void, not darkness, just distance. Impossible, impassable. Yet somehow, waiting. There was no bridge, no planks, no ropes, no arches. Just that vast space between where we stood and where the story pulled us next. The child didn't hesitate. He walked to the edge, toes over the drop. He didn't look down, only ahead, then back at us, and said, "This crossing is not made with feet, only with what we've kept hidden." The reader stepped forward. His hand trembled. He closed his eyes, breathed, and then he spoke a word. Only one. But the moment it left his mouth, something shimmered across the chasm. A faint outline, like a thought made visible. A single plank, suspended in air. The child nodded, spoke. "Truth is weightless. but when spoken, it builds. We understood. This was not a bridge we could build together. Each of us had to shape our own crossing. Not with stone, with confession. I stepped forward, heart pounding. Not from fear, from resistance. Because I knew what I had to say, and I didn't want to. But the chasm didn't accept silence, only honesty. I spoke. I once let someone love me who I didn't love back, and I let it continue not out of cruelty, but cowardice, because it was easier than being alone. The wind caught my words, carried them outward, and in return a shimmer, a plank, wide enough for one step. My body shook, but I took the step. The plank held. It didn't creak, didn't move. It accepted. The others followed, each confession different. One man admitted he had stolen. A woman said she had lied to protect herself and regretted it every day. Another said nothing aloud, but her tears fell, and the air responded. Her bridge began to form. Step by step, we crossed. Each truth laid before us a little more pathway. Each breath that carried pain built structure. The air wove our honesty into shape, and the bridge grew, not ahead of us, beneath us. Halfway across, I looked back. The cliff was gone. No edge, no chamber, no fire, only mist. Because once you begin this walk, there is no return. Only remembering forward. The child didn't walk. He floated. Not above us, among us. He carried no truth. Because he was truth. The accumulation of all we had built, all we had remembered, all we had survived. He was the echo of every wall, every bowl, every breath we'd surrendered. Near the center of the chasm, the air shifted. Thicker, not heavy, earnest. Here, the bridge paused, waiting, not for a word, for a truth deeper than confession. The kind we don't speak, because we've buried it too well. The reader stopped, knees weak. He looked at me and said, I once watched my brother drown. I was there. I could have reached him, but I didn't, because I was afraid. Silence followed. Not judgment, not pity, just silence. A silence that made space, and then the bridge moved. It didn't form. It welcomed, and the path ahead pulsed once, like a heart. I took my turn. This time, no words. Only a thought. I was never sure if I was meant to survive, but I did, and sometimes I still wonder if it was right. The wind heard. The bridge heard. I heard. And then I walked. Lighter, as if the act of carrying that weight all these years had finally paid for my passage. The final steps were not built by us. They were built by everything that came before us. The wall, the ash, the fire, the city. They rose beneath our feet, held us, cradled us, and said, You are not alone. You have never been alone. We crossed, and stood on the far edge. Not land, a platform, suspended in mist, waiting. And ahead a door, not carved, not built, just present, waiting to be acknowledged. The child walked to it, did not knock, did not speak, only placed his palm on its surface, and it opened. What lay beyond we could not say, not because we didn't understand, because there was no longer a need for language. Only arrival, only presence, only the next shape of memory. We stepped forward, together, one breath, one truth, one story, unfolding. Every path ends in a doorway, but not every doorway leads out. Some lead inward. This chapter begins not with a threshold, but with a realization. You are the archive now. The stories no longer surround you. They emerge from you. And the room ahead, it does not ask questions. It already knows the answers. It waits, not to test you, but to witness the version of you that arrives when everything else has been given away. We stepped through the door. No push, no pull. It opened the way, mist yields to wind, not resisting, just shifting. What lay beyond wasn't architecture. It wasn't even space. It was recognition, the feeling of entering somewhere that had always existed inside you. You hadn't seen it before because you hadn't become ready yet. Now you were. There were no walls. Not in the sense of division, only layers, like sheets of silk suspended in air. Each one shimmered with impressions, not images, not sound, something deeper. They pulsed in rhythm with us. Or perhaps we pulsed with them. In the center of the room stood a circle. No pedestal, no altar, just soft ground that seemed to rise slightly, as if acknowledging us without interrupting our arrival. The child stepped into the center. The light grew softer, and then the room breathed. Not air, attention. Every shimmer paused. Every motion stilled. The feeling was unmistakable. The room was watching. Not from above. Not from around. From within. The reader stood at the edge of the circle. Looked into the center. Not at the child, but at something deeper. Then said, "This is where we learn what our story meant to those who never heard it." The child sat, cross-legged, eyes closed, hands open, and something began to emerge from the circle. Not a figure, a presence, familiar, massive, gentle. It had no face, but we knew it, because it was us, older, brighter, more complete. It did not speak. It simply watched, and one by one we entered the circle. Not to perform, to be witnessed. The first stepped forward, an elder quiet for most of the journey. She placed her hands together, and then apart. In the space between them, light began to form. Not from her fingers, from memory. Moments of pain, laughter, grief, kindness she never spoke of. They rose like mist, coalesced into threads, and formed a pattern in the air. The presence saw, acknowledged, and the light settled gently into the elder's chest. Not taken, returned. She smiled, stepped back. The next entered, then another. Each offered something, not facts, shapes. Each memory held not as an event, but as a feeling never fully given away. This was the room where those feelings came home. When my turn came, I hesitated, not out of fear, out of reverence. This was not the place for storytelling. This was the place where stories were laid to rest, not buried, but planted. I stepped forward, let my shoulders drop, let the tension go, and opened my hands. At first, nothing. Then, slowly, heat. A soft warmth rose through my palms, and with it, faces, places, fragments. Not my story. Our story. The bowl, the wall, the fire, the spiral, the child. They circled me like constellations reuniting, and in that moment, I understood. I hadn't traveled through the archive. I had become it. The presence moved closer, not physically, but emotionally. I felt it reach for something in me I hadn't named. A moment when I had chosen silence over truth. A memory I had carried, but never examined. I didn't resist, and when I let it rise, I cried. Not from pain, from relief. Because here, even the unspoken was allowed to matter. The room pulsed once more, and this time the shimmer folded inward. Layers upon layers converging around us, not to trap, to hold, to form a cocoon. We were no longer many. We were a whole, a single breath shared across dozens of lungs, and in that breath, revelation. The presence, now fully formed, spoke. You have remembered enough to be remembered. You have carried long enough to be carried. You are not stories. You are storying. Then it bowed. Not out of deference. Out of joy. The child stood. He had grown. Or rather, we could now see him more completely. Not older. Just clarified. He walked to each of us, took our hands, and whispered one word. Give. We didn't ask what. We knew. The bowl we had carried. The embers we had touched. The memories we had feared. The truths we had named. We opened ourselves and gave. Not away. Forward. And the room? It received. Not like a vault. Like a garden. Each gift planted. Each fragment welcomed. And in the center of the room, a tree began to grow. Not a large tree, but tall enough to feel ancient. Its branches reached outward, touched the shimmers, and wrote. Wrote what? Not language. Feeling. It shaped our memories into something permanent. Not in stone. In connection. As the tree grew, we felt lighter, not emptier, released. We had finished our part of the spiral, but the spiral itself was far from over. The presence approached the child, placed a hand on his shoulder, then turned to us, and said, "You do not leave this place. This place leaves with you." And just like that, the room faded, not collapsed, not vanished, merged with us. We stepped out into the open once more, but everything was different, because now, every breath we took was an archive. Every word we spoke was a bridge. Every silence we held was a bowl waiting to be filled. We looked at each other. No one spoke. No one needed to. Because in that moment, we were not a group. We were a single remembering, living, breathing, sharing itself through us. And from somewhere behind us, the tree, now fully grown, opened one eye and smiled. Some endings don't arrive last. They arrive first. They wait for the story to catch up. This chapter begins with footsteps not moving forward, but in a circle, not of confusion, but of recognition. You've been here before, not physically, in dreams, in pauses, in all the quiet places memory hides when the world is too loud. This is not the end of the journey. This is the place the journey was always moving toward, the ending that waited before you even began. We didn't descend. We didn't climb. We returned, not to a location, to a state. Somewhere between breath and thought, we stepped into a place that felt like it had been holding its breath for centuries, waiting for us to arrive. The ground beneath our feet was smooth, polished not by tools, but by hope. Every step we took echoed like a story finishing its sentence. Ahead of us, a spiral. Not carved, not painted, just there. In the way the dust settled, in the wind's pattern across the stone, in the way our feet instinctively knew where to walk. It led inward, and inward we went. The reader led the way. His shoulders relaxed. His hands no longer clenched with questions. He was no longer reading. He was written. Each wrinkle in his face now a sentence. Each movement, punctuation. The child walked behind him, but this time, different, taller, still, like something ancient had entered him and remembered how to breathe through skin. We entered the spiral, not to finish, to remember how we began, and in the center of it, a chair, simple, stone, smoothed by time, no throne, no altar, just a place meant for witnessing. The reader sat. The rest of us formed a circle, and the child stood alone in the center. He did not speak. Instead, he raised his hands, and from each palm light, soft, amber, breathing, the kind of light you only see behind closed eyes. When dreaming of things you've never lived, it rose upward, twirled, formed shapes, a bowl, a wall, a path, a fire, then a door, the final symbol, and then it all spiraled inward again, back into him, and he spoke. This was not your test. This was your memory. We looked at one another, faces that now held more than age. They held continuity. We were not people who had walked together. We were pieces of the same story that had remembered itself at last. The spiral beneath us began to glow, faintly, each ring a pulse, not light, heart, and we felt it. The place itself was alive, not with breath, not with blood, with purpose. It had waited for generations, not for a hero, not for a victory, but for completion. The reader rose from the chair, walked to the edge of the spiral, kneeled, placed his palm on the ground, whispered something we couldn't hear, and the floor responded, not loudly, not visibly, but deeply. The child walked toward him, knelt opposite, placed his hand beside the reader's, and said, "One remembers forward, the other remembers back." Now they remember each other. A line of gold etched itself between their palms, grew outward, circled the spiral, touched each of us, and in that moment we knew this was the moment before the story began, not in the past. In the first breath of purpose, the place where every spiral, every stone, every silence began to form. We had returned to the seed, not of our journey, of all journeys. I stepped forward, spoke only this: we remember not because we must, but because we're ready. The light around the spiral rose into the air, formed threads, and for the first time we saw them. The ones who had come before, not ghosts, not ancestors, just previous versions. Faces that looked like us, but younger, older, bolder. Some smiled, some cried. All watched, and each one carried a bowl, and inside each bowl a piece of the same spiral. The child turned to us, held out his hands, and in them the final ember, cold, still, waiting since the fire. He walked to the center of the spiral, placed the ember on the ground, and it did not ignite. It opened, not fire, not ash, but song, low, endless, without melody, yet undeniable in its rhythm. It wasn't music, it was naming, and it named each of us. Not aloud, not in sequence, but fully. We felt our names not as words, but as places. Each syllable was a doorway, and we passed through, one by one, into ourselves. Not alone, never alone. The spiral held us. The light carried us. And in the center of it all, we became still. Not finished, whole. And the voice of the place said, "You are the ending that began it all." One by one, we stepped backward from the spiral. But the spiral stayed with us, etched behind our eyes, woven into our skin, a part of our breath. Outside, the horizon had changed. The world no longer pulled. It waited, not with demands, with welcome, because now, wherever we walked, we would carry the story, not in memory, in presence, and somewhere, deep in the spiral's center, the ember still glowed, not burning, just knowing and waiting, as endings do, for the next story to begin. Some stories don't end. They change form. They become wind, footsteps, breath in the quiet hours. This final chapter doesn't close the book. It opens the door behind it. The spiral no longer waits in stone. It moves in you. You are not the reader now. You are the page. Walk slowly. The next ones are already listening. We stepped into the morning, not out of darkness, out of memory. The sun did not rise. It remembered how. The wind did not blow. It listened as it passed. Every tree turned gently. Every leaf trembled, as if the world recognized the return of something long buried, completion. We no longer spoke of walls, of bowls, of ash, of bridges, not because they weren't real, because they no longer needed to be named. They lived in us now, not as lessons, not as burdens, as foundations. Each step we took echoed, not across stone, across others, because now every step was a page in someone else's beginning. I walked at the edge of the group, my hands open, my breath steady. I could feel the spiral moving in my chest, not as image, as rhythm. It pulsed once with every heartbeat, a reminder that I was no longer walking forward. I was carrying. The reader moved slowly now, not from age, from reverence. He understood something none of us had spoken aloud. This was not a return to life. This was life. All of it. Every silence. Every memory. Every truth laid bare in fire or stone or voice. He looked at the child, smiled, and said, "You don't need us anymore." The child replied, "I never did, but I remembered better because of you." We passed through places we had forgotten existed, but they had not forgotten us. A grove of trees whose leaves tilted as we passed, forming spirals above our heads. A pool of water that shimmered not with light, but with the faces of those who had walked before. And beneath our feet, patterns, always spirals, always reminding. We met others on the way, not like us, new, wandering, some frightened, some curious. They watched us, and without words, they joined. Not because we asked, because something in our pace, in our presence, invited them. We never explained. We didn't need to. Some stories don't require telling, only being. One girl asked me, "Where are you going?" I looked at her, smiled, said, "Where I've already been." She blinked, nodded, and walked beside me. That's how it continued. Not in ceremony. In simplicity, we walked, and the path formed, not from stone, from connection. The reader grew tired. He sat beneath a tree, closed his eyes, and said, "This is my ending." We knelt beside him. He didn't ask for comfort, only presence. And as he breathed out once more, the wind around him whispered, "Remember me when you forget yourself." Then silence. Then peace. We built no grave, no marker, because the path itself carried his name now. Every person who stepped where he once walked would remember, without ever knowing why. The child led now, not alone, but sure. He walked not with destination. With intention, we came to the edge of a wide plain. Nothing ahead, just wind and sky. He turned, faced us, and said, "You are ready." We didn't ask what for. We knew. Each of us stepped forward, closed our eyes, and chose. Some turned back, not out of fear, out of purpose. They would carry the spiral elsewhere. Some continued into the wind, toward places that needed new remembering. Some stood still and waited for others to find them. Each choice perfect, each motion part of the whole. I chose to walk east, where the light softened, where silence hummed, where something unnamed waited not with urgency, but with open arms. And as I walked, I heard them, all the names I'd ever been called, all the moments I thought were lost, all the breaths I took that no one saw. They were here, with me, not behind. Inside, the spiral never ended. It walked, too, through every hand we held, every truth we spoke, every pause we honored. And so this chapter ends, not with silence, but with continuation, because somewhere, right now, someone else is sitting at the edge of a wall, holding a bowl, watching the ash drift, and wondering what story they've stepped into. They don't know yet, but you do, because it's this one, because it's always been this one, and it will be theirs now, to remember, to walk, to spiral forward. Thank you for walking with me. We'll meet again, in the next memory, where the fire still waits, and the wind still listens, and the spiral still turning, always turning.